Man, what it must be like to be a fly on the wall of Palpatine's office when Partagast goes to have a meeting with him about the intake process for the ISB. Like, what must that meeting be like?
Director Partagast, I would like to direct your attention to Article 6 of your process. I would like to know...
The shriveled brood of a man just asking for meetings. It's great. I love it. Hello, interwebs. I hope you are all doing well because I am here to review the second block of 3 episodes of Season 2 of Star Wars Andor. As per usual, I will go full spoilers into these 3 episodes, so know that going in. If you have not seen any of the 3 episodes or all 3 of the episodes, please jump off here because I'm going to talk full spoilers. That being said, I want to say this right up front. I jumped on these episodes as soon as they came out. I know I've made a statement saying like, oh, I will probably wait a few days. Like, no, I was so excited to jump into these episodes. So pumped. Literally while I was watching these 3 episodes, I was incredibly excited, like taking notes. I'm like, oh man, this is so good. I'm so excited to come and review it and talk with it all to all of you. And then, and I need to emphasize how excited I was because in the last 10 minutes of the 3rd episode, they literally made a decision, and it's a decision that I literally put in my phone. I like take notes on my phone, and I really hope to God they're not about to do what I think they're about to do because it is textbook what they are about to do, and I hate it. I hate it so much, and they ended up doing it, and it literally killed my entire enthusiasm for talking about these episodes, which sucks because I'm going to try and find that enthusiasm because so much of the rest of this episode I love. I think these are so great and are doing so many great things, but they do one particular thing that is just, it's a tired, lazy trope, and it's one that deeply offends me, and it's done so textbook on the nose, obviously, and I even saw it coming, and I was hoping that they were going to zig. Instead, they zagged right into what all of these shows do, and it just really upset me. For those of you who know, I'm sure many of you already know. If not, we will get there when we get there. But let me try and find the rest of my enthusiasm because there were other things in this episode, even storylines that I was expecting to critique that it even pulled me back around to at the very end of the episode. It's just one particular choice that just, man, it's gonna make me, it literally just like killed it dead, and I'm honestly gonna be trying to like build it back up because I had it. I was so freaking pumped. There was so much I loved about these episodes, and so like let me see if I can find that energy again before I end on sadly a note of frustration. So sorry, that's where it's gonna be heading. But let us start with all the freaking good in this episode because there is a lot of freaking good. The main themes that came out to me of these 3 episodes were focusing on the fact that this is spiraling out of control. This rebellion is spiraling out of control for everyone on both sides, not just for the rebellion and Luthen and everyone, but even for the Empire as well. Like there's just so many things that they have to keep track of that it's become a nightmare to even try to process for anyone. And I found that to be a really cool idea to just showcase the extent of just everything going on and how everyone's feeling it, even on both sides. And on top of that, I really loved the fact that this episode was also about what we fight for. The recurring theme that kept coming up over and over again is that we can't just be fighting just to fight back against them. We have to have something that we are holding on to. And I really liked that as an idea. I think that that's something that is speaking to me very much recently, is like we can't just be fighting back. We have to be fighting for something. And I thought that was a really smart theme to hone in on this episode. And I really liked how they really did it, except for one particular thing. But otherwise, I loved honing in on that storyline. Getting into some specifics, we start off with Cassian and Bix on Coruscant of all places, and I always just like seeing Coruscant. It's just such an interesting location for Star Wars. So anytime we get to see another angle of it, and we get to see like high-rise apartments that people are living in, and we even get to see like a bodega that they go into to cook food, and just the everyday sort of city life that it represents. I thought that was really just interesting and fascinating to see the mundanity of this Coruscantian city. You know, I loved the conversation between Cassian and Bix, where you can clearly see that Cassian is talking about, like, we're fighting a war. We need to, like, focus in on doing these things. And Bix is sort of hung up on this fact that he killed a soldier, not just because he was a soldier, but as we learn as the conversation goes on, because he saw her face and he was doing it to be overprotective of her. And certainly he has every right to be. He sees his face, they could come and trace her down, and he wants to be protective of her. But she's struggling with this idea of A, Cassian being slightly overprotective of her, and B, that like this is the cost of this fight, of people. You have to kill people who know you, and you have to harden your heart to that to a large degree. And it's weighing on her, because this is something that she never asked for. Cassian, to a degree, was pushed into it as well, but he had a little bit more agency in choosing this life than Bix ever did. And Bix is, certainly she seems very competent, though that is one of my criticisms. I'll get to in a second, but it's weighing on her. But as we got into the episode, we started to see that she's taking drugs to numb the pain. And that's where I started to get to this point of, man, I'm worried that we're going to see her like OD, and that's just going to be the storyline with her. And we've put this girl through so much trauma, and I really hated that we were being told that she was competent, that she was doing missions with Cassian, but we weren't actually seeing it. And then most of the story was just her focused on doing drugs and dealing with trauma, which again is realistic to a degree. I'm not saying that it's not realistic, but it was one of those things like, oh, we're just going to keep traumatizing this woman and just cast her aside as like being in the domestic sphere, and like she's putting together a house, she's sitting, taking drugs, doing nothing, even though we're told that she can do things, not being shown it. And that ended up kind of frustrating me. And we even got a note later on where Luthen comes and sees her, and he sees her taking drugs, and he doesn't send her out. And I liked the moment where he said, he sort of implied that he used to take the drugs himself to numb the pain. I just like the implication that he knows how the drugs affects, and he wants to get her stronger to use her. But again, Luthen always thinks in use, in terms of how to use people. And I liked Cassian going and confronting him and getting to this theme of like, we need something to fight for, of like, Luthen, you cannot just use her. You have to, like, we are for each other. We're here for each other. And Cassian still being that sort of male dominant overprotectiveness that he can be for Bix, which I hope is a sign of just the show being willing to critique that. They didn't critique it much in this episode, which concerns me a little bit, but it is him being a little bit overprotective of her. And yet he's also pointing out too that he needs connection. We all need connection, and Luthen can't just use people. And it's a repeated theme. Like even Mon Mothma says that to Luthen at one point when she says, oh, I want to talk to my cousin. And he's like, oh, do you have a reason to talk to her? And she's like, just to let her know that I care. Like, that's important too, and people need that to have something to hold on to fight for. So loved all of that being a reiterated theme, but I was just worried that Bix was going to be stuck in this like, oh, she's just taking drugs, she's going to OD, or she's going to be tied to this. But no, instead, at the end of the episode, she goes and kills Dr. Gore, the fucking dickwad asshole who tortured her and gave her all that trauma in season 1, and Cassian helped her. Like, he's put his stuff aside to help her deal with that and get through that, and I loved that. That's the moment where I said like, oh, the end of the episode pulled me out of a storyline that I was like really kind of out on. Like, I didn't hate it, but I was sort of like, it's legible, and I don't hate it, but Bix getting stuck in this role kind of frustrates me, and I like that Cassian puts aside stuff to help her have agency. And I'm hoping in the next few episodes with her, we'll actually see her getting to have agency. I worry about her surviving, because obviously Cassian falls for Jyn Erso in Rogue One, and he's not with Bix, so I have a feeling she's probably not going to survive too much either. But yeah, that sort of comes with the territory based on the story that we're going for with Jyn Erso's character later on in Rogue One. But let us move over to another storyline that I generally really liked, and that is everything to do with Gorman. Holy crap, just first and foremost, every technical skill used to display the culture of the Gorman is phenomenal. The set design using like wood to sort of differentiate their culture and give it a unique look. We need to bring wood back to science fiction. Like, wood used to be like a thing, and like David Lynch's Dune used wood paneling, Star Trek and the Next Generation used wood paneling. We've since lost that in science fiction. Bring back the wood paneling. I love the wood paneling. It looks nice. It's a good aesthetic. Their outfits are clearly, at least to me, maybe I'm misreading my history, I'm not exactly a fashion person, but their look clearly gave French, like World War II era French resistance kind of outfits, with the berets and such. Maybe someone who knows better than I do will call me out on that, but that was my read on it. Even their language had like a French-sounding phoneticism to it, so clearly trying to evoke that sort of French resistance imagery and technicality, but also like their hand movements and gestures. They even have like a middle finger gesture, was just so good. You could see there was a lot of patience paid to the world building of Gorman. It's similar to Ferrix. In fact, even potentially more so than Ferrix from season 1. I love just the aspect of that. I think the one set in particular, like all the sets were great, but in particular that cafe set with like the spiders on the walls and such was gorgeous. Like, simply freaking gorgeous. Everyone working on that should be praised, like, to high heaven. I really liked this idea that we're dealing with Gorman under pressure from what we saw last week with the Empire trying to sort of ostracize them from the rest of the galaxy. And we see that clearly with Mon Mothma's quick scene in, I think, the episode 4, the first of the 3 here, where she's clearly trying to gather senators to come to Gor's aid. And even Gorman's like, I can't push against the Empire because they'll come down harder on me. And it's sort of like showcasing how, like, that liberal mindset that Mon Mothma is kind of in, the like, oh, we can work within the system to try and push back against fascism, isn't going to work. And certainly, you know, Mon Mothma is able to work a little bit outside the system because of her connections with Luthen, but she's still stuck in that mindset of like, I can affect change here. I can do things here. And even the Gorman are sort of like, I can't do anything. My hands are tied, and no one else is willing to come to their aid because of how much they have been ostracized and otherized and made to have no political, it's like not politically convenient for anybody to come to their aid. And it just showcases how well the Empire has ostracized them and otherized them and sort of made propaganda against them. And I like seeing that we get all shades of levels of that. We even get Syril's mom and talking about like how she watched, like, oh, look at the Gorman, they're so much better than us. And Syril says, oh, you're watching too much, not ISB News, the Imperial Broadcast Network. And I'm just like, wow, she's just caught up watching Fox News. She's just sitting there watching too much Fox News television. One also side note on that, there was an episode where Bix is drugged out and she's watching the TV, and it was sort of like the setup for like, ooh, and Senate oath-taking day or whatever it was is coming up. And it very much was like Hunger Games Capitol like look, like the women on the thing were like all done in makeup. Not to say that that's not realistic for Coruscantian society. It reads, but it felt very evocative of Hunger Games Capitol. And it's so much so that I'm like, that just kind of threw me out because I'm like, that feels like straight out of another franchise. Another franchise that I like, to be clear. I like the Hunger Games. Did anyone else read the new Hunger Games book? It was really good. I'm excited for the movie. But anyways, it threw me out because it was so Hunger Games coded. Regardless, I did like we're seeing all the pressure being pushed against the Gorman, and we have this Gorman underground, the Gorman front, which is clearly like a sort of like coded like anti-imperialist French resistance-y style thing. And you can tell that they're competent, like they're organized, they're competent, but they're green, and they're making silly mistakes, like trusting, for one, Syril Karn, who we'll come back to in a minute. But they're not dumb. Like, I love the moment where they're trying to recruit Syril, and they look up his history, and they see that he was fired by the ISB so that he would rightly have, they read him wrong, but, you know, based on the information they have, they could assume that he would have a grudge against the ISB, but when they go and say, and try to bring him into the fold, Radagaz, whatever the guy who leads it, I forget his name, it starts with an R, that was, like, contacting Luthen, who ran the textile shop, I forget his name. He doesn't try to get Syril into the fold by saying, oh, we're against the Empire. He says, we're against ISB. I think the ISB are running a shadow government. We're actually truly loyal to the Emperor. I don't think they believe that for a second, but they are smart enough to understand that Syril would still have loyalty. He might be a true believer in the Empire, even if he has a grudge against the ISB. So they have enough to know the nuance of that. And I like that is in distinction from the insurgents that we saw last week that were sort of fighting. And what I really love that Andor is doing, seemingly this season, is it is critiquing anti-imperialist movements and revolutionary movements, but not in a way that you would normally see in TV shows where they would just ultimately vilify it. Like, I think the example of this would be, in recent years, would be Marvel's Flag Smashers from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where the Flag Smashers were just like, they were an anti-colonial group, but then they would just go too far and just randomly kill civilians for no goddamn reason. And the show could then rightly point, like, well, I agree with them, but not their tactics. And it's just vilifying revolutionary movements to uphold the status quo so that the main character can go, do better, Senator, which I hated. But here in Andor, what we're doing is the show is very clearly pointing out, like, here are anti-imperial movements, and here's the mistakes they made. Here in episodes 1 through 3, those insurgents that we got were clearly like leftists or whatever who like valorize revolution, but don't do any of like the planning, the training, the coalition building. They're just going out and just be like, I want to fight with no direction. And it ends up like that. They end up with infighting and causing strife and interrupting actually legitimate organized movements because of the incompetence and just lack of taking this seriously. I mean, they take it seriously and they know it's life and death, but they aren't like serious people in how they enact it. And here we get something slightly different where it's like, they are, for the most part, competent, but they're very green and making silly mistakes. And there are kids in this show. We'll get to the guy in a minute, but I don't hate the idea of like there are people in the movement who are incompetent and just like, I'm the dude who wants to show myself. I'm gonna show up and like I'm gonna be the cool revolutionary and daydream about it. So like there are those people, but overall they are competent, but they're making silly mistakes. And you can see when Cassian goes, which by the way, freaking Diego Luna, when he goes to Gorman and he looks like the designer, man, cleans up so fucking nice. So fucking nice. I was sitting here being like, hot fucking damn, Diego Luna, you are just a sexy, sexy man. I am here for my anti-fascist sexy man. Love it. But when he goes, he's clearly pointing out like you're making silly mistakes. Like the people you have following me, they're drawing attention. You don't know if I'm ISB. You need to be more careful. And he goes to Luthen and says that, but Luthen, because he's feeling the pressure of everything, he's like, we need to bring Gorman in. This would be great for us. And he's not wrong necessarily, but he's going to get people killed because he is ultimately pushing these people who are too green into they're going too fast. And Cassian has a great point. It's like everyone knows, as we can see, that the ISB are building a base there, and they're just trying to prove something that everyone already knows. And yeah, maybe they'll show it to the galaxy, but what is anyone going to care? It's like, oh yeah, the Empire built a base on your planet. It's like, yeah, that's bad, but like the Empire's everywhere, and it's not necessarily going to help anybody. It's the wrong tactics, and we clearly see that by the fact that this is what Dedra, excuse me, I got her name wrong. Dedra is trying to do. She wants these insurgents to go against the Empire so they can legitimize crackdowns on them slowly but surely and build up an justify, colonizing further the Gormans. So it's playing right into their hands, which again is just, it showcases like, it's a good critique of anti-imperial movements in a way that's not vilifying them, but showcasing to people watching, like, this is what you don't want to do. This is the things you need to be aware of. And I think that that's really smart. And frankly, sadly, in today's day and age, very, very necessary. I mean, I was watching this with, I watched the first 2 episodes with my fiance, and she was sitting here being like, man, this just feels too real. I feel like we're the ones being like, oh, we can try and talk to the senators, or we can, try and prove to the galaxy that like the Imperial Empire is doing this, when like what we need is like people to actually like fight back and not just rely on these things. And she was like kind of having a panic attack about a little bit, not like a legitimate like deep one, but it was one of those like, oh man, this is getting too real. Don't want to delegitimize panic attacks. As someone who's had many panic attacks in my life, I use the phrase a little bit lightly there. Let us get to everyone's favorite Syril Karn, everyone's favorite little fascist boy. Everything with him was great. My only knock really against this storyline with Syril Karn is that he was too competent. I'm just like, the little fascist boy from season 1 who couldn't even give a little speech has grown all the way up, and I'm like, he's too competent for Syril Karn. He's getting things too correct. That being said, it was interesting to just see like him play the part of someone who is on the Gormans, or like an Imperial officer who is starting to question not Imperial officer, works for the Imperial government, who is starting to be sympathetic to the Gorman. And obviously he's playing that part because he's actually reporting to Dedra. But you can see like how that builds, like how the ISB agents come to his office, and he puts on a show of like standing up for the Gormans and being like, you can't send them out of here, like, and he gets himself arrested. And it's a thin line to walk where he's looking good, but he doesn't want to look too good because it would be too obvious. And I just love that. I also love that they're giving like messages to each other in spiders. That's just a really cool and creepy thing. So all of that stuff was truly fantastic. And again, the highlight of Syril Karn's story, though, is his relationship with Dedra and his mom. My first thing is when he goes to Dedra and they goes to their apartment, and he's like, oh, I'm only allowed to stay here an hour before I have to go report to Partagast. Dedra says, turn off the lights. And it's presumed that they have sex. And I'm like, oh, of course they have sex with the lights off. Like, just she doesn't look at him. She's like, turn around. I can't look at you while we're having sex. You know that that's how Dedra has sex with Syril. She just hates him so fucking much. They're perfect for each other. And then also the moment where Dedra takes Syril in to get, report to Partagast about what's going on, and it's clearly they're setting Syril as an informant in there. I love that when Partagast gives him a small compliment, good job, Syril, and then walks out, and he's like, I think, what was his line? If I say that this is the best day of my life, would it ruin the moment? And she's just like, it's good to see you happy. I'm like, oh my god, you're such a little fascist dweeb loser. It's so funny. Yes, what you're doing is awful, and it's going to lead to people dying, which is legitimately awful in universe. But just as a character, he's such a little fascist dweeb. It's so funny. He's such a fucking loser. The content. We stay on the content on this show. And then also when he goes to his mom, and she's just like, oh, maybe I'll name the spider Syril. It's just like having you here. I'm like, and he's just like, he's just still eating his cereal, cereal corn, just eating his cereal. God, it was just, all of that was fantastic. But yeah, again, legitimately the slow build of him working his way as a double agent inside of there is very, very good. Speaking of double agents, though, we also get the stuff with Lonnie going on here. Loved all of this. It was some small stuff he's able to get information to Luthen. Luthen wants more. And I love the storyline with them needing to get the listening device from the bottom of the thing from the guy that they were listening in on. And you get the sense, too, and I touched upon this, Luthen's feeling the pressure. They have too many listening devices out. He can't keep track of everything. There's too much going on. And they're only getting little bits and pieces, and he feels like, oh man, we exposed ourselves too much for something so small, and they have to deal with it. And the sequence where they go to the party to try and get it out is honestly thrilling. I honestly thought that was more thrilling than them stealing the weapons on Gorman. I thought that sequence was more tight. Couple things with that scene, though. Mon Mothma going in, and we get a little cameo by Bail Organa. To my memory, I know that this isn't the actor who normally plays Bail Organa, and it's weird to me because it's a little Bail Organa cameo, and I don't think this actor, I recognize the actor, I don't think he's ever played Bail Organa in anything else. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong if he's appeared in other Star Wars projects. Did he appear in season 1 of Andor, Bail Organa? Regardless, we've seen Bail Organa recently, the actor who normally plays Bail from the prequels. He was in Obi-Wan, and I know that he's probably more expensive, and he was in Rogue One as well, if I recall. I know he's probably more expensive, but it feels weird to, unless I'm misremembering this guy, a cameo as Bail Organa before. And again, I like the actor, I recognize him, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. But it feels weird to have a needless Bail Organa cameo, especially if we're not going to see the actor who normally plays Bail Organa. If you're going to have an Easter egg cameo like that, have the actor that we want Bail Organa to be playing as be there rather than it just being the character. It's just weird. I usually don't want Andor to do cameos regardless, but if you're going to do them, do them in a way that's oh yeah, I recognize the guy. Otherwise, it's just kind of it's a half measure that's all right, you're not pleasing the people who want the Easter eggs, and the people who don't want their Easter eggs in the Star Wars Andor aren't getting it, aren't enjoying it either. So you're pleasing really no one with it. It was just a strange choice. I forget Luthen's assistant's name. She's by the way, she's great. I love her. I wish I knew her name off the top of my head, but she's wonderful, and I love her getting Lonnie. It's Lonnie, you're gonna help me do this, we're gonna be tested possibly, fucking help me here. Loving that, and him just having to be convinced and moved around. Also, I love the stuff with Lonnie and Guy who's currently on the Axis beat, as it were, looking for Cassian, and that Lonnie's getting information from. I love when Partagast goes to them and says, oh, we're gonna be sending Dr. Gore over to other people so they can use him, whatever, and watch our interests. And the guy says, oh, it's an honor, sir. And Partagast just looks at him it's an assignment, bro. Calibrate your enthusiasm. I just love it. It's dude, it's an honor? All right. Now you're trying to suck up to me too much. Great, loved that. There's so many little bits of comedy in this that I just love. Again, love this show so much. I wish there wasn't a thing that I'm gonna have to talk about in a little bit that pissed me off so much, because I loved this. It's so good. It's so good. Let us get to a storyline that I found actually interesting, but not super enthused about until the very end, which is everything with Saw Gerrera. Love Forrest Whitaker, Saw Gerrera. He is great. He's the only guy that seems to actually be doing great in this environment. He's I'm thriving. We're doing awesome. Revolution, let's hear. I do well in this. I love that he's, we see that he's still working with Luthen, but he's out for his own interest. He's doing what he's going to do. He's not willing to link up with anybody. And that's ultimately kind of the problem with Saw Gerrera. He's a fundamentalist who isn't willing to work with the actual, larger group. He's going to do his own thing, and he can be useful, but he's a fundamentalist, I do my own thing, which can be helpful and can be a problem at different points in terms of the larger struggle. I love this whole bit with, Will is teaching this guy how to use this, bomb, essentially, and needing to do it properly and needs to be calibrated. I didn't get the logistics of it, but I knew enough of what they do. It's there's a certain sequence that he needs to teach him, but if he learns the specific sequence, it'll give away what they're going to plan to bomb, so he has to teach them all of them. And I like the twist, because I actually didn't even really expect it, that the guy that Will was teaching was the actual Imperial agent, and he was trying to get the location out from Saw, who then kills him and had fed him misinformation, and they needed to use Will. Loved that. So I thought that was a good twist, and I was sort of okay, this is all interesting. But what it all led to was that speech at the end of episode 5, which does not necessarily rival the One Way Out speech or the I burn my life speech from season 1. It doesn't match either of those two speeches, or even Marva's fight the Empire speech from season 1 either, but it is in the conversation with those three, which is his revolution is not for the sane, and also him saying, we're the thing that explodes when there's too much friction in the air. Oof, such a great line. That scene was so great, and I loved him talking about how back on his home planet, this is the thing that sort of got him to fight back against the rebellion. He relates to this chemical that can explode, and it's he's not a sane man, but I like his line, revolution is not for the sane. It just makes me think of, I don't think this is the intention by the show, but it's something I think about often. My friend Aronok, she's the co-writer of my channel, she has a line in an essay. She hasn't released this essay, so I want to make sure I credit her with this, but it's a line that sticks with me from having read it, and I hope she releases it one day. But the line that is, to paraphrase her, there is a mindset for evil, and it is most often sane. It was an essay that she wrote about people who suffer from mental health problems are the ones that are most often the victims of many of these systems of power and oppression. And power and oppression also creates people suffering mental health problems because of the way it oppresses and hurts us. And often these systems are run by people who are thinking rationally, thinking sanely, and we tend to vilify insane people and vilify mentally ill people. But they're the ones that are often the ones who are most harmed by these things, and often the ones that are trying to link up with other people to create community or to fight back, when the people in charge are the ones who are, evil is in many ways very upsettingly rational. And I think that gets to the point of kind of this larger episode, as I've hinted at, the episodes themselves about we need to be fighting for something, linking up with people, feeling, having emotion. It can't just be yes, it is important to be thinking smartly about how we do these revolutions. We can't just be off on a limb, just running with our impulses, but we also do have to have something we fight for and people we fight for. That matters too, and there's a balance in that, and I think that all of this kind of gets at that. And so I just, even though I don't necessarily know if the saneism and ableism placed in a lot of imperial and fascist stuff was what the show is necessarily going for, it's implicit in what Saw is saying, and I really liked that line quite a lot for that. Also should mention Krennic showed up, and I love his speech with Mon Mothma. They're these rich assholes. Mon Mothma is privileged. Krennic's obviously very privileged in his position. And, they're just arguing about oh, your rebel is my terrorist. And it's Mon's not necessarily wrong. I appreciate her sentiment, but it's you get to sit here and intellectualize while you're standing over relics taken from other cultures in front of you. So it's just fascinating that. And I also love at the end Luthen being we should have killed Krennic earlier, and then that gets a legitimate smile out of Luthen. She's I feel like I've been fake smiling this entire time. So loved all of that. I'm so annoyed right now because I had to pause my recording for a second and I forgot to unhit record because I kept going for another 10 minutes and fuck. So we'll get back to it because I had a whole rant that I was on and I now need to redo it. But before I get back to that rant, I have to say the other things I said. There's a couple small things here that I just wanted to note that I really did like, that are just small, minuscule things in the episode. First off, I loved at the end of episode 4, we get that really beautiful scene between Cassian and Bix where they touch each other's hands. And I love that it's them finding sensitivity to each other and caring for each other through touch. And it goes to what we see at the end of episode 6 with the artifact that Luthen's assistant is talking about. Like, that artifact was about a culture that felt like touch and like skin can be more evocative than language. And we get that all the way back in episode 4 with Bix and Cassian showcasing that, like, touch and knowing each other. And it goes to that idea of this whole episode's about, of like, what are we fighting for? Who are we fighting for? Caring for each other. It's just a repeated theme. And I also love how Cassian is so sensitive to Bix's, to her trauma. And even again, at the end of the episode, like, stands up for her and like actually goes and kills Dr. Gore with her. Love that. But it goes right back to this, like, what are we fighting for? And it's for these moments of like touch and care and having moments with each other. And I loved that. I thought that was beautiful. Another moment is I also really love Cassian's scene with the bellhop. It was a really great moment where you could tell that the bellhop was very reserved because he's used to probably rich, hoity-toity people coming in and voyeuristically asking him about the trauma of his culture and his personal trauma as like, ooh, isn't that a cool little touristy thing? But then you can tell that Cassian is very earnest, like earnestly curious. He's not voyeuristically looking. He wants to know. And there's an earnestness in that the bellhop recognizes, and I love him talking about like the trauma of his culture. And I love that we get a sense that this culture already has trauma from fascism. Like the fact that Tarkin lands his ship on 500 protesting people. Jesus Christ, that's dark, but it's a perfect evocation of how fascism and imperialism does not care for indigenous people, just uses them up. Will just land on them if they're inconvenient. Like, fuck, that's dark. And you get the sense that like there's a history of pain here that makes the fact that the Imperials are building a base there even more galling, that they're doing it in the shadow of that. And I like that. That's a great sense of history, and you get it from this kid. And I love this kid saying like, I haven't gone very far, and you sense this pain and him wanting to link up for more and not knowing how to do it, and Cassian sort of recognizing that. And it goes to what Cassian's seeing here. It's like there's a pain here, and they do want to fight, but they're moving too fast. And the bellhop sort of evokes that culturally. And the kid's not part of the rebellion or the movement or whatever, the Gorman front, but he is evoking that pain that the culture feels, that is causing them to react in like very quickly and fast. So I thought that was very interesting. Also, and this is the nittiest of picks before I get into my big thing. This is a dumb nitpick, and actually it's not wrong, but there was a line that Cassian had when he's talking to Luthen where he says, "We're not droids, Luthen," which is a great line in the sense that like it's pointing out again what I've been talking about, like how Luthen is cold and calculating, doesn't like let people be people, and Cassian's arguing like, no, we need to feel and care for each other. However, I will say this Star Wars Andor is the one Star Wars show where it actually treats droids as people. Like B2EMO is the one droid in all of Star Wars who's actually treated like by a full person by the people around him, and it's treated like a full being, whereas most Star Wars at best treat as like secondary, like you're not fully human. Like we'll treat you as part of the gang, but we'll like C-3PO you. You're kind of annoying and off to the side, and we'll still have you do our inane tasks and put you in danger because your life is not seen as valuable. That's most of other Star Wars. Other Star Wars, like fucking Solo, will do the thing that I was criticizing Marvel for doing, which is vilify revolutionary movements of oppressed people fighting back. It will make fun of that and make that a joke. Hate Solo for that. Or at worst, it'll do shit like The Mandalorian, which will have the droids literally say, "We like being slaves." Fuck that. They're clearly sentient beings. Obviously, that's a whole can of worms that I'm opening up there. It's a larger discussion for the depiction of droids. But as someone who does see the droids as people, I love Andor for showing B2EMO as a person. So I'm just like, oh, Cassian, you're showcasing your anti-droid bias. And it reads right. It's a right thing for him to say. Even Andor, who is someone who has treated B2EMO like a person, might have some anti-droid bias in him. So I was sort of like, disappointing Cassian, but makes sense. And it was evocative of the point that the episode was trying to make at that time, the larger point towards Luthen. But I was like, I clocked that. I clocked your bias there, Andor. Anyways, that's a dumb nitpick, but silly, but I thought was fascinating. Anyways, let me get to the big thing. And I've already ranted this already once, so let me see if I can work up my anger again, because the thing that I am most angry about with this episode is the very tropey, bury your gaze storyline in this episode. And it is done to a goddamn T, and it angered me. Because everything up until that point, we get Vel and Sintra, and they reconcile and come back together, and I loved the scene where Sintra says, Luthen values us separately. And Vel says, no, we need to tell him differently. And it goes to that point of like what we're fighting for. And I love that we're valuing lesbian characters, finding value in each other, and valuing like that as like, oh, our love matters, and that's what we're fighting for. And it gets to the larger point that the whole episode was getting to. I love that scene, but I wrote down in my notes, literally in my notes, I'm like, if they're doing what I think they're about to set up, I'm going to be pissed. which is don't do the bury your gay storyline. And they did. And I will be clear. I want to be very clear before I work up my anger here. I get what the episode's doing. It's pointing out how the Gorman Front is while they are organized, while they are some competent in some level, like they are able to pull off this attack, they do still have some things to learn, and they still do have people who are like this kid who is just trying to prove how tough he is and daydreaming about being a revolutionary without actually putting in, like, being serious about it. He pulls out his gun when he could have de-escalated the situation and been smart about it. He pulls out his gun at an opportune time and gets someone killed. I am not saying that as a wrong thing to showcase. In fact, especially the MO of this show is to show like a critique of anti-imperialist movements and how they can do better. That is a very correct critique, and it's a very correct thing to show. It's a thing that does happen. But to do that by killing off not only the gay character, but the woman of color is galling to me, because it showcases how devalued women of color are, and queer women of color and queer people are. And I already see people out there going like, oh, what, you mean you can't kill gay people in stories? I'm not saying you can never kill gay people, but it is so easy in our culture, like our culture, for women of color and lesbian women and women generally and queer people to be seen as disposable. And we are so often the ones tossed aside in stories so easily, and especially women of color, that to have the show just use her as a cannon fodder for this lesson so quickly, it underscores that sense of disposability. The show is treating her as disposable for a storyline about something else, instead of like seeing her as a valuable person of interest that the story might have interest in. It showcases a disinterest by the writers instead of to just use her for trauma porn, considering that like gay characters are often used for that, and we're often seen as disposable. It is so frustrating. It comes out of the Barry Gay storylines from like the 60s or 50s where like gayness had to be punished because of like the Hays Code or whatnot. Like this is different than that. It's not saying gayness need to be punished, but it's sort of saying we don't really have an interest for your character, so we'll like be progressive by having gay characters in Star Wars, but we're going to not care enough about you and we're going to toss you aside. And that is so clearly evoked by the fact that how textbook it is that the setup for this was. Because I would have been still angry at this, but I would have been less angry if they had like had interest in these characters and there was like an investment in the characters. And then so when Sintra dies, and there's like a sense of like, oh, like we've had time with these characters. But no, these characters broke up between seasons, and then right when they get back together, they kill her. So we have this sense of like, oh no, right at the moment where they were going to fight for each other. Oh, how sad. Oh, how tragic. Oh, how, like, we don't get actually time with these two together. No, we're just going to do it so it's like smother on the tragedy. And it just makes me so angry. And it's like, again, I wouldn't have loved killing a gay character, but if we had at least spent time with her, or had other gay characters besides just Vel, I would have been less upset about it. But it's just so upsetting, and it was so obvious, the setup, and it was so textbook. And the thing that bothers me more, not even bothers me more, but I'm offended as a queer person, but I am also bothered by how lazy this is. It's a lazy trope. It's an easy trope that I've seen done in so many billions of other things. And that is upsetting for a show that has shown me time and time again, it is not lazy. This is one of the smartest written shows. It is clear they put so much thought and effort in like research into everything, the history that they're evoking. And the fact that they can evoke all this history, get all this anti-imperial stuff, and then still do the laziest trope against queer people and people of color, it's just upsetting. And it shows a lack of care that they put into everything else. Not only in terms of the writing, but a lack of care of understanding marginalized communities that they're representing, that they so clearly are evoking historically, but aren't necessarily putting in the work to understand. And it was very disappointing. And I hope it's clear. I love this show. I've just been talking for 45 minutes or so about how much I love Star Wars Andor. So I hope it's very clear. I'm not just sitting here railing against the show, but like this was deeply disappointing to me. It's lazy, and it offends me personally as a queer person, but it's also lazy as a writing trope in a show that proves to me that it's not lazy. So it showcases to me that they're lazy when it's about something that they don't want to spend the time taking the time to know. And that's disappointing. And it hurts a little bit, frankly, from a show that I get inspiration from and love. It's very sad. And I guess part of it comes down to the fact that we are skipping so much of the timeline here. I think this is where I'm starting to see the show's like time structure suffering. Because if you didn't know behind the scenes, Tony Gilroy was originally planning this as 5 seasons, but then realized it would take too much time to do 5 seasons. So that's why we're getting, a year for every 3 episode chunk of this season. We're going to skip ahead another year next episode too. So, and I feel like that's partially why I'm pissed off. If we had spent more time getting to know Vel and Sintra, like we got some time with them in season 1, but like it just feels feels like, oh, the show broke them up and got them back together just in time to give us the trauma moment for their characters. And it just showcased the lack of interest in them. And I think that underscores the feeling of like, oh, she's just treated as disposable. She's just treated as like a cheap way to wring emotion out of the end of these 3 episodes and be like, oh, I feel so heartbroken at the end of these 3 episodes. And it's like, if you actually had taken time and treated it as character, which you might have had if you had more time with the show, I feel like it would have, maybe I probably still would have been angry about it, but it would have at least not shown to me that the show was being lazy in that choice. But here it just comes across as a lazy choice to just wring out emotion, and doing so with a character that is often treated the most disposable, or a type of character, I should say, that is often treated the most disposable, not only by stories, but by our culture generally. And that's what I think is ultimately pissing me off the most about it. And I think it comes down to, in large part, the structure of this season of the show. Because I don't hate this. I've been liking it so far, but I think this is where I'm starting to see the seams a little bit. And that's a worrisome sign for us going forward, too. And I'm jumping back in here because I want to make this very, very articulately clear. Because I was editing and I realized I didn't make this point as clear as I want to make it. I'm already having annoying arguments with people on fucking Blue Sky about this. So I want to make this point just straight up. What offends me about this is not that they inherently can't kill gay characters. I'm not saying that you cannot ever kill gay characters. But it is a easy trope, one that is used over and over and over again, of just killing off gay characters. So when you do it, you need to use it with precision. I would argue you should try to avoid it if at all possible. But yes, this is a story about fascism. And in a story about fascism, queer characters, as with any love in this world, is not long for this world or is always going to be in some form of danger. So I get that. People are going to die. I understand. What this story did, though, was the most bottom-of-the-barrel, lazy writing in doing this setup. I have seen this type of story a billion fucking times before, of 2 gay characters split up, oh, they get back together at the last minute, so they don't have to actually spend time in the show actually showing 2 lesbian characters getting to be happy, getting to be together, or even, not even necessarily happy, doing what Bix and even Cassian are doing in this episode, which is them struggling to figure out their relationship within a fascist society. No, we get none of that. We just get them getting back together at the end of 6 episodes. So we have 6 episodes with them just having little hints of looking at each other, barely seeing each other. And then as soon as that happens, then she gets killed in a very disposable fucking way. Like, she's just treated like she's just we can get rid of her character. And it showcased that they had zero interest in actually taking the time to depict these characters in a relationship. Like, if they had taken the time to depict these 2 characters, like, struggling with the relationship within, like, being 2 rebel women, 2 queer women within a society, and dealing with all this stuff, and then killed her, I still would have been upset about it, probably, but I would have felt like it was less lazy. And I would have been at least more open to hearing the argument from the writers of, this is just what happens to people. Like, I would have understood that. But what you're showing me here is that you don't have any interest in actually depicting this relationship with any depth. You're just going to use it for trauma porn. And you're going to treat this character as disposable. The character who is from a group in our culture who is often treated as disposable in stories. Queer women of color. You're just going to treat her as disposable by the story. And that is deeply upsetting because the show clearly had way less interest in Sintra's character than it even did in Vel's character, who is already a character that we've shown to see that the show has less interest in than any of the other characters on the show. Like, she is one of the most, like, she's central to the plot, sure, but she is a side character. And it's like, oh, okay, so you just have no interest in these characters really in terms of, like, them as people dealing with a relationship in this world. And especially in 3 episodes about, like, people struggling to care for each other within this world, to just treat her as disposable, it bugged me. And I'm not saying you could never kill her character. I'm not saying you could never, kill gay people ever. Though I would argue you should try to avoid it if you possibly can, considering how much it is a trope. But if you're gonna do it, earn it. And they didn't earn it. They did a lazy, fucking tropey way of doing the trope. And it showcases to me that they just didn't have interest. And if you're going to showcase to me that you don't have any interest in queer people, or especially queer women of color, people who are often not shown to get enough interest in any stories, let alone like big franchise medias like Star Wars stories, especially Star Wars, which has had a history of how people of women of color have been mistreated by the fandom. It's just sad to see Star Wars doing that. And you know what? I don't even necessarily say to see Star Wars doing it. Star Wars does that all the time. Star Wars Andor, though, showed to me that it was better than that. But I guess not. And what it ultimately did was, like, that happened, and I felt numb for the rest of the episode. Because the rest of this episode I should have loved. I should have loved the moment where Luthen, like, is talking about cracking wise about killing Krennic, and they got away, and the scene where, Bix gets to kill Dr. Gore. I should have been standing there going, like, yeah, kill that motherfucker. I should have been standing there, but I sat there just kind of numb, being like, all right. And it puts a damper on my excitement for the next few episodes of the series, which sucks. It sucks, because I love this show, but it just put a damper on the whole thing. It's frankly just disappointing from this show, and it when it knows it, and I know it can do better. And I'll be back next week. Like, don't think like I'm gonna find my enthusiasm. We'll be back next week. We'll get back into the show. I do love this show still, but it was just one of the most disappointing things to watch. And it just dampened my enthusiasm, which sucks because I loved these episodes otherwise. And Vel's speech was great. I love her speech to the guy saying, like, you will carry this the rest of your life. Like, everything she said was correct, and I thought it was very powerful. And I want to be clear. This is a story about fascism. Not all queer people are going to survive that. It's very obvious. I understand that. Like, I want to be very clear where my anger comes from here. It's not that they just killed a queer character. It's that they killed them in such a tropey way and in such an obvious way that clearly showcases how much the show felt disposable. Like, it's not that fascism was treating her as disposable. It's that the show was treating her as disposable. So yes, queer people dying fits the story of Star Wars Andor. It fits the story of fascism, but the way that they did it was lazy and tropey and told me how little interest they had in trying to do something interesting with a trope like that. So that's where my anger is coming from, because what it signals to me about the writers of the show in terms of knowing about queer community storylines and their interest in queer characters. Especially queer characters, women of color. And you could have chosen to do something different. You could have chosen to give more centering to the queer woman of color. Even if you were ending up killing her, you could have centered her more, but you didn't, and you just disposed of her. And it pisses me the fuck off. So I just want to be very clear about where my anger is on that. So sadly, that is the note I have to end this on, because everything else about these 3 episodes I loved. I thought they were fantastic. I thought they were great. I hope that is clear, that despite my disappointment and anger at this choice, the rest of this I loved. But I have a feeling this is what the comment section is going to be all about. Say lovey. And I bet it's good. I can already tell the comments are going to be like, well, you're saying gay people can't get killed. Or I think like, you think that like, it doesn't fit that gay people should be killed in stories like this. Like, no, that is not my problem. Hopefully you can see where I'm coming from. I worry that that's going to be the discourse. But regardless, I can't control that. Let the discourse be what the discourse is going to be. I hope my opinions have been made clear. But I love the show. I'll be here next week, even though I'm disappointed. But with all that said, I hope you, my friends, live long and prosper, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts.